If you have ever felt that tight pressure in your chest while waiting for her reply, this video is for you. If you have ever replayed conversations, wondering what you said wrong, this is for you. And if you are tired of feeling invisible, replaceable, or anxious around women you care about, stay with me. Because chasing women feels logical. It feels romantic. It feels like effort equals love. But deep down, you already know something is wrong. Here is the uncomfortable truth. The harder you chase, the weaker you feel. And the weaker you feel, the less attractive you become. Not because women are cruel, not because you are broken, but because desire does not work the way most men are taught. Right now, there are men who give less, speak less, explain less, and somehow receive more respect, more attraction, and more commitment. Meanwhile, good men exhaust themselves trying to prove value, loyalty, and intention, only to feel ignored. That gap hurts. It creates confusion. It creates resentment. And eventually, it makes you doubt yourself. This video is not about tricks. It is not about manipulation. It is about dignity, about understanding why chasing silently teaches a woman that you do not value yourself. And once that lesson is learned, it is almost impossible to undo. Today, I will show you 3 reasons you should never chase women. Not to control them, but to reclaim your power, your peace, and self-respect. This will change you forward permanently today. Most men chase because they believe effort creates attraction. They believe consistency proves worth. They believe if they just show enough care, patience, and persistence, the woman will eventually see their value. This belief is understandable. It is also deeply flawed. Attraction is not built through pursuit. It is built through presence, through self-control, through a man who is grounded in himself, not orbiting someone else's attention. When you chase, you unconsciously communicate that your emotional balance depends on her response. And the moment your emotional stability is outsourced to another person, respect quietly disappears. This is not about playing hard to get. It is about understanding a psychological law that governs human desire. People value what feels earned, not what feels desperate. They are drawn to certainty, not pressure. And they feel safest around someone who does not need them to feel whole. When a man chases, he collapses polarity. He steps out of his center and into reaction mode. He waits. He hopes. He adjusts himself to be chosen. And women can feel this instantly, not intellectually, emotionally. It triggers discomfort, not desire. The men who never chase are not cold. They are calm. They are not distant. They are anchored. Their lives move forward regardless of who enters or exits. That energy is rare, and rarity creates attraction naturally. This topic matters because chasing does not just affect dating. It erodes your identity. It trains you to abandon boundaries. It makes you negotiate your worth. Over time, it teaches you that love must be earned through self-sacrifice instead of shared desire. Once you understand this, everything shifts. You stop forcing connection. You stop performing. You stop chasing potential. And instead, you allow women to meet you where you stand. Here is the hard truth most men avoid. The moment you chase, you begin teaching her a lesson about your value, not with words, with behavior. And behavior is the loudest language there is. When you chase, you signal that access to you is unlimited. Your time is flexible. Your attention is always available. Your standards are negotiable. Psychologically, this removes mystery and replaces it with predictability. And predictable things are useful, not desired. The human mind assigns value based on contrast and boundaries. What is scarce feels important. What is earned feels meaningful. When you chase, you erase both. You communicate that she does not need to invest, initiate, or wonder. She already knows you will be there. Think of a man who always replies instantly, always adjusts his schedule, always forgives disrespect, always explains himself. At first, it may feel comforting, but slowly it lowers her emotional investment. She stops trying. She stops leaning in. Not because she is bad, but because nothing is required of her. I have seen men chase for months, even years. They become emotional support, validation, and attention on demand. Then one day, she meets another man who does not chase. He is calm, he is busy, he is not trying to impress, and suddenly she feels something she never felt with the chaser. Tension, curiosity, desire. Here is what changes when you stop chasing. You stop teaching people that your presence is free. You stop rewarding indifference. You allow silence to exist without panic, and that silence creates space for her to step forward. Respect grows when you do not overextend. Attraction grows when you do not overexplain. Power returns when you stay rooted in yourself instead of reaching outward. This is not withdrawal, it is self-possession, and it changes everything. Attraction needs tension, not drama, not games, but polarity. A clear emotional difference between two people that creates pull. When you chase, that polarity collapses. Polarity exists when one person is grounded in their direction and the other is drawn toward it. A man with purpose, rhythm, and inner stillness creates a natural gravitational pull. But the moment he starts chasing, he flips that dynamic. He begins reacting instead of leading, and reaction dissolves attraction. Psychologically, chasing puts you in a submissive emotional position. You are waiting for approval, waiting for a response, waiting to be chosen. That waiting energy is felt immediately. It creates pressure, and pressure makes desire shut down. Think about a man who checks his phone constantly, rereads messages, adjusts his tone to avoid losing her, and feels anxious when hours pass without a reply. Even if he never says a word, his energy has shifted. He is no longer present. He is monitoring, and women feel this shift intuitively. Now compare that to a man who sends a message and returns to his life. He does not rush. He does not explain. He does not fill silence. He trusts the connection or lets it fade. That calm creates contrast. That contrast creates curiosity. And curiosity is the beginning of desire. Here is a real example. A man meets a woman and feels immediate chemistry. He begins texting daily, initiating every interaction, pushing the pace. She responds at first, then slowly pulls back. He senses the distance and chases harder. She withdraws more. Polarity is gone. Here is what changes when you stop chasing. You restore balance. You allow attraction to breathe. You give space for her to feel instead of react. And in that space, she either steps forward or steps away. Both outcomes are power. You do not lose women by not chasing. You lose women by abandoning your center. The most damaging part of chasing women is not what it does to attraction. It is what it does to you. Slowly, quietly, almost invisibly. When you chase, you begin editing yourself. You soften opinions. You tolerate behavior you would normally walk away from. You ignore red flags because the fear of losing her becomes louder than the voice of self-respect. Psychologically, this creates internal conflict. And internal conflict kills confidence. A man who betrays himself cannot feel powerful. Even if she stays, he feels smaller because deep down, he knows he abandoned his standards to keep her interest. That knowledge erodes his masculine core. Chasing teaches you to associate love with anxiety, with effort, with emotional labor. Your nervous system stays activated. You are always on edge, always calculating, always hoping. Over time, this creates resentment, not just toward her, toward yourself. I have watched men stay in situations where their needs were unmet, their energy drained, their presence taken for granted. They kept chasing because they believed walking away meant failure. But the real failure was staying disconnected from their own values. Here is the psychological shift that matters. Self-respect is felt before it is seen. Women respond to the way a man treats himself. When you chase, you tell her that you will abandon yourself for connection. And that is not safe, not attractive, not sustainable. Here is what changes when you stop chasing. You start listening to your intuition. You enforce boundaries without anger. You walk away without explanation. And suddenly, you feel solid again. You stop asking, how do I keep her? You start asking, does this align with who I am? That shift is everything. Here is something most men never realize until it is too late. Whatever behavior you reward, you reinforce. And when you chase a woman who gives you mixed signals, slow replies, or emotional distance, you are teaching her that indifference still earns access to you. Psychologically, humans learn through cause and effect. If she pulls back and you move closer, the lesson is simple. She does not need to show effort to keep you engaged. Your chasing fills the gap that her investment should occupy. This is why some women become more distant the more a man pursues them. Not because they enjoy power, but because there is no consequence for disengagement. The dynamic becomes unbalanced. One gives, one receives. Imagine a man who keeps inviting a woman out, even after repeated cancellations. He stays polite, he stays patient, he stays available. Over time, she stops seeing him as a potential partner and starts seeing him as optional background energy. Comfort replaces curiosity. Now imagine the same man who, after two canceled plans, simply stops initiating. No anger, no explanation, no chase. Suddenly, the dynamic shifts. Either she steps forward or she disappears. Both outcomes restore balance. Here is what changes when you stop chasing. You stop rewarding low effort. You allow actions to have meaning. You let people rise to your standard or fall away naturally. This is not punishment. It is clear. And clarity is attractive. Desire needs space to breathe. Curiosity is born in uncertainty. And chasing removes both. When you chase, you reveal everything too soon. Your feelings, your intentions, your availability, your emotional temperature. There is nothing left to discover, nothing left to lean toward. Psychologically, the mind disengages when there is no unknown to explore. Mystery is not secrecy. It is self-containment. It is a man who does not rush to explain himself, justify his interest, or expose his emotional world before it is earned. When you chase, you hand over your inner world without invitation. Think about how stories work. The characters that hold our attention are not the ones who reveal everything in the first chapter. They unfold slowly. Their depth is discovered over time. Attraction works the same way. I have seen men text paragraphs explaining how much a woman means to them after just a few dates. They think honesty will create closeness. Instead, it creates pressure. She feels responsible for emotions she did not ask to hold, and pressure suffocates desire. Now imagine a man who expresses interest clearly, then allows space. He does not flood her with reassurance. He lets connection build through shared experiences, not constant explanation. She wonders about him. She thinks about him. Curiosity grows. Here is what changes when you stop chasing. You stop oversharing. You let silence work for you. You allow attraction to develop at its own pace. Mystery returns. And with it, desire. Attraction fades when everything about you becomes easy to forecast, and chasing turns you into a pattern instead of a presence. When you chase, your behavior becomes consistent in the wrong way. You always initiate. You always respond the same. You always try to fix distance with more effort. Psychologically, the brain disengages when there is no variation, no tension, no uncertainty. Predictability feels safe, but it does not feel exciting. It does not stimulate emotional investment. When a woman knows exactly how you will react no matter what she does, her emotional engagement drops. Not consciously, instinctively. Think about a man who always forgives immediately, always explains, always stays. Over time, his reactions lose weight. His presence loses impact because nothing he does changes the dynamic. There is no consequence, no shift, no emotional contrast. Now contrast that with a man who is consistent in values, but not emotionally reactive. If something feels off, he pauses. He does not chase clarity. He observes. He allows distance. His responses are thoughtful, not automatic. That unpredictability creates respect. Here is a real-world example. A woman pulls back slightly to test the connection. The chasing man doubles down with attention and reassurance. The grounded man does nothing. He continues his life. One becomes predictable, the other becomes intriguing. Here is what changes when you stop chasing. Your reactions regain weight. Your presence becomes felt. Your silence speaks louder than your words ever did. You are no longer a pattern to be managed. You are a man to be experienced. The fastest way to lose power in any relationship is to place someone above yourself. And chasing does exactly that. When you chase, you subconsciously elevate her to the role of the prize. Her attention becomes the reward. Her approval becomes the goal. Psychologically, this flips the natural dynamic. You are no longer choosing, you are auditioning. A man who sees a woman as the prize behaves differently. He overvalues her reactions. He downplays his own needs. He frames connection as something he must earn rather than something mutually discovered. This creates an imbalance. Women are not attracted to men who shrink themselves. They are drawn to men who stand in their worth and allow connection to meet them there. When you chase, you send the message that your life improves only if she chooses you. That is not confidence, that is dependency. Think about how attraction begins naturally. Two people observe each other. There is mutual curiosity, mutual effort, mutual risk. The moment one person starts chasing, that symmetry breaks. I have seen men obsess over women who did not truly know them simply because they were withholding. The scarcity created obsession, but the obsession lived only in the man. The woman felt no such intensity because she was never required to invest. Here is what changes when you stop chasing. You reclaim your position as the prize. Your life is full, your standards are real, you choose, not beg. Attraction flows when both people feel they are stepping towards something valuable, not when one is kneeling. Chasing does something subtle but dangerous. It wires your mind to associate connection with fear. When you chase, you are not acting from abundance. You are acting from the fear that if you stop, she will disappear. Psychologically, this keeps your nervous system in a constant state of alert. You are not enjoying the connection. You are guarding it. Fear-based attraction is unstable. It creates anxiety, overthinking, and emotional dependency. Instead of presence, you bring tension. Instead of confidence, you bring urgency. And urgency repels. Think about how many men stay in conversations that feel one-sided because they are afraid silence means rejection. They keep the thread alive. They keep the door open. They keep chasing not because they feel good, but because they fear the ending. Now imagine a man who is not afraid of loss. He knows that if a woman fades, it is information, not a verdict on his worth. He does not chase closure. He does not chase reassurance. He lets endings happen cleanly. Here is what changes when you stop chasing. You break the link between love and fear. You feel calm whether she stays or goes. Your emotional state no longer depends on outcomes. And when fear leaves, confidence returns. Masculine energy is not loud. It is not aggressive. It is steady, directed, self-contained. And chasing slowly erodes that frame. When you chase, your focus shifts outward. You begin orienting your decisions, emotions, and time around her reactions. Psychologically, this collapses your frame. Your life stops expanding and starts revolving. A strong masculine frame is built in direction. A man knows where he is going, with or without anyone else. When a woman enters that path, she adds to his life. She does not become the path. I have seen men abandon hobbies, friendships, fitness, and ambition because they were consumed by one woman's attention. At first, she enjoyed being desired. Over time, she felt suffocated because there was no longer a man standing in his world. There was only a man orbiting hers. Here is the uncomfortable truth. Women feel safest and most attracted when a man's life is bigger than the relationship. When you chase, you shrink that world. Here is what changes when you stop chasing. You refocus on your mission, your health, your craft, your discipline, your friendships. Your world grows. And as it grows, your presence becomes heavier. You stop trying to hold someone. You become someone worth holding onto. One of the quiet costs of chasing is that it numbs your inner voice. When you chase, you override your instincts. You feel something is off, but you ignore it. You sense imbalance, but you explain it away. Psychologically, this happens because desire mixed with fear drowns intuition. You become invested in outcome instead of truth. Your intuition is designed to protect your dignity. It notices tone shifts, effort gaps, emotional inconsistency. But when you are chasing, you are not listening. You are convincing yourself and her. I have seen men stay in dynamics that drained them because their mind kept justifying what their body already knew. They felt anxious after every interaction. They felt small. They felt uneasy. Yet they kept chasing because they were afraid to trust themselves. A man disconnected from intuition becomes reactive. He seeks clarity from her instead of clarity within. He asks questions he already knows the answer to. And every unanswered question weakens him further. Now imagine a man who listens inward. If something feels wrong, he pauses. If effort is not returned, he withdraws. Not emotionally, strategically, calmly. He trusts his internal signals more than external validation. Here is what changes when you stop chasing. Your intuition comes back online. You stop negotiating red flags. You feel grounded in your decisions. You do not need explanations to walk away. A man who trusts himself does not chase. He chooses. When you stop chasing women, something quiet but powerful begins to happen inside you. The noise fades, the urgency dissolves, and for the first time in a long time, you feel like yourself again. You stop waking up with your phone in your hand. You stop measuring your mood by someone else's response time. You stop rehearsing messages in your head. Your nervous system relaxes, and in that relaxation, strength returns. This is not about becoming distant or cold. It is about becoming centered. A centered man moves differently. He listens more. He reacts less. He does not need to prove anything. His energy is clean, calm, grounded. When you stop chasing, you start choosing. You notice who shows up for you, who invests, who meets your pace, and instead of forcing connection, you allow alignment. That alone filters your life in a powerful way. Your standards rise naturally, not from ego, from clarity. You realize that attention without effort is empty, that attraction without respect is unstable, that connection without reciprocity is a dead end. Emotionally, you become harder to shake. Rejection no longer feels like a threat. It feels like information, and information gives you freedom. You no longer take things personally. You take them accurately. Your relationships improve because you are no longer desperate for them. Your presence becomes heavier. Your words carry weight. Your silence becomes meaningful. Most importantly, your relationship with yourself heals. You stop betraying your values for approval. You stop negotiating your worth. You stop abandoning your path for possibility. This is the transformation. From reactive to rooted, from chasing to choosing, from anxiety to authority. And when a woman meets a man like this, she does not feel pressured. She feels safe. She feels curious. She feels drawn. Not because he chased, but because he stood still. There comes a moment in every man's life when he realizes that chasing was never love. It was fear dressed as effort. It was insecurity disguised as loyalty. And once you see that, you cannot unsee it. The strongest men do not rush. They do not plead. They do not perform for attention. They stand in their lives, fully present, fully occupied, fully grounded. And from that place, they allow others to meet them there. When you stop chasing women, you do not lose opportunities. You lose illusions. You lose the dynamics that were draining you. You lose versions of yourself that were built on anxiety instead of truth. What remains is quieter, stronger, real. You begin to understand that attraction is not something you force. It is something you allow. That respect is not requested. It is demonstrated through boundaries. That love does not require you to abandon yourself. A man who does not chase is not passive. He is deliberate. He knows that what is meant for him will recognize his stillness, not exploit his movement. And if someone walks away because you stopped chasing, they were never walking toward you in the first place. This is the final truth. You do not attract what you want. You attract what you are. So build a life that feels solid without validation. Build a presence that does not need permission. Build a standard that filters instead of chases. Because the moment you stop running after what does not choose you, you make space for what does. And that is not a dating strategy. That is a way of life.